It's time for my review of episode 6 of Pokemon Journeys. Was it good or bad? Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, it's me DeWarioFreak here, and welcome back to Pokéviews, the show where I sit down and talk about the Pokemon anime with you lovely people listening. Today we're talking about episode 6 of Pokemon Journeys series, and I'm pretty excited to give you guys my thoughts. So the episode begins with a brief flashback of a major event from the previous episode, Go catching Scorbunny. After said flashback, Go is keen and determined to catch more Pokemon. Ash and Professor Sakuragi suggest they go right now, so the boys make their way over to a forest. They find a Pidgey and Go decides to try and catch it, but ends up failing. This brings up the first thing I really want to talk about, and it's that I noticed that this show is getting extremely goofy. During this scene, and several times throughout the episode, both Ash and Go act very humorously and find themselves in very silly situations. I think this really just goes to show how much this series has of a different tone. Sure, the Sun and Moon series had its comedic moments, and they've always been present throughout the entire anime series, but I'm not kidding when I say it felt like almost half of the entire episode was always tying into some skit or antic. Continuing on, Go and the gang end up failing to catch a Pidgeotto and Diglett, which leads them to finding a Caterpie. Go successfully catches it by carefully approaching it. He's very happy about this and sets his goal of completing the Caterpie evolutionary line. This is something I found a little strange. Why would he want to do this? Why not just evolve the Caterpie he caught? I know it would take time, but that's kind of what you're supposed to do in the world of Pokemon, isn't it? Aren't you supposed to bond close with all the Mons you catch and evolve them? Regardless, the episode continues and Go begins traveling around the forest, and in the blink of an eye begins catching more and more Pokemon. Most of these he literally does by just chucking a Pokeball at them. Also, with the exception of once or twice, he basically never misses any of the Pokemon he catches. This is a point I really had to take issue with, because in the long-running history of the Pokemon anime, with literally over 1,000 episodes, Ash, who has multiple times had the goal of catching them all, has caught less Pokemon in an entire season than Go did in this one episode. At this point in the series, Ash has caught a little over 50 Pokemon across more than 23 seasons. Go caught 11 in just this episode alone. That's nearly 1/5 of everything Ash has worked for over the past 2 decades. The bigger issue I have with this is that it just breaks what the Pokemon anime has taught us about catching Pokemon. Each Pokemon is meant to be a special member of the team that you bond with and bring along for an adventure. Not a Pokemon you just pointlessly catch to fill out the Pokedex and dump in a research center with little intent of ever seeing again. It just made Go more unlikable by showing that he doesn't actually care that much about his Pokemon, unless they're Scorbunny at least, which is pretty darn cruel. Another thing I noticed during this whole episode was Ash himself. The question I have is, what is he doing? No, seriously, he devoted an entire episode just to help Go catch these Pokemon. He seemingly has no goals of his own anymore. Why isn't he out in Galar trying to catch a few new Pokemon and take on the Galar League? I'm aware that later on he will be going to Galar and likely challenging some new trainers, but it feels like he's taking it so lightly. On top of this, with an entire episode dedicated to Ash trying to help Go, it almost feels like the show doesn't revolve around him anymore. He just plays second fiddle to whatever Go wants or the plotline of the episode is, which is not what Pokemon anime fans have come to expect after 20 years of seeing more traditional stories following Ash's adventures or daily life. Another thing I noticed was that Go was mostly just catching the Pokemon by himself. Sure, Scorbunny was there, but he wasn't battling. With the exception of Scyther and Venonat, unless I'm forgetting something, Scorbunny did not battle any of the Mons that Go caught. How is he going to get any stronger? How did he even stand ground to the Scyther? This whole series just feels like they're giving Go everything for free, while Ash hasn't even caught a Pokemon or gotten a badge in the season thus far. I know some people will point out that in later episodes he does catch cool Mons and does stuff, but that doesn't justify these first 6 episodes lacking any real purpose for him. It's just bad structure all around. Anyways, to conclude, Go catches the Scyther and places all 11 Pokemon he caught in a greenhouse ecosystem park that Professor Saris, I don't know, he places them in this greenhouse thing that he happened to have built. I'm sorry, but that is total bullshit. How did he just randomly build it? Koharu, Chloe, which doesn't even have the same ring as her Japanese name, finally shows up in this episode, and not gonna lie, I actually really liked her appearance. Why? Because she brought Go's goals and actions into question, providing a new perspective. Prior to her appearance in this episode, it was just Go wanting to catch Pokemon for whatever reason and Ash just going along with it. And this cycle repeated literally 11 times throughout the episode. Maybe it was just refreshing to see a different perspective, but I really liked Chloe's small cameo in this episode. I am not lying when I say she carried the entire episode. But that raises another issue. Why wasn't she in the rest of the episode, and why have they not been using her in this series very much? She could be a character that could add so much to this series. She contrasts from both Ash and Go perfectly, and honestly it feels like she contrasts in a way different to any prior Pokegirl. She doesn't seem too cookie cutter, but what do they do instead of using her? They just cameo her at the end of every single episode where she adds nothing to the overall plot. That's pretty much all I have to say about this episode. I honestly give this episode about a 3 out of 10. Pretty bad. If it weren't for the Chloe part though, I'm not kidding, I may have given it a 1 out of 10. But that's gonna do it for today's episode of Pokéviews. That's all for now though. This is DeWarioFreak signing off. Have a great day.